What if I told you a man survived being nuked twice and lived to 93? Or that someone fell from a plane at 33,000 feet without a parachute and asked for a cigarette when they woke up? You think you've had a lucky day? These people didn't just cheat death. They made the universe look incompetent. This isn't about finding a dollar on the sidewalk. This is about 33 humans who became glitches in reality itself. Ready to meet the luckiest bastards in history? 1. Tsutomu Yamaguchi, the man who made atomic bombs look amateur. Imagine surviving a nuclear bomb. Now imagine doing it twice. Tsutomu Yamaguchi was a 29-year-old engineer on a business trip to Hiroshima in August 1945 when Little Boy detonated less than 2 miles away. The blast ruptured his eardrums and left him with severe burns all over his body. Most people would call that enough trauma for a lifetime. Not Yamaguchi. The next day, badly injured, he took a train back to his hometown. Want to guess where he lived? Nagasaki. 2 days after the first bombing, while describing the mushroom cloud to his disbelieving boss, Fat Man exploded. Again, he was within the blast radius. Again, he survived. He lived to be 93 years old, becoming a living testament to both humanity's destructive power and one man's absurd refusal to die. Surviving one atomic bomb is a statistical miracle. Surviving two is the universe playing a cosmic prank with a terrible punchline. Your life's boring compared to this. Subscribe so you can feel worse about your own luck. 2. Frane Salak, the music teacher who made death look incompetent. Ah yes, the classic story of a Croatian music teacher who apparently signed a personal vendetta with the Grim Reaper. In 1962, Frane Salak's train derailed and plunged into an icy river, killing 17 people. He survived. A year later, he was sucked out of a malfunctioning airplane door mid-flight and landed in a haystack while 19 others perished. Then, his bus skidded into a river. His car caught fire twice. He was hit by a bus. Finally, his car went off a cliff and he was ejected from the vehicle, managing to cling to a tree while his car exploded 300 feet below. After flirting with death 7 times, the universe apparently decided to apologize. At 73, he bought a lottery ticket for the first time in 40 years and won nearly $1 million. It seems he used up all his bad luck in one spectacular run. 3. Roy Sullivan, the human lightning rod who made Thor look petty. The odds of being struck by lightning in your lifetime are about 1 in 15,300. Roy Sullivan was a U.S. park ranger who apparently made a personal enemy of the god of thunder. Roy was struck by lightning not once, not twice, but 7 officially recorded times between 1942 and 1977. He was hit while in a lookout tower, while driving his truck, while standing in his own front yard, and even while fishing. The strike set his hair on fire, blew the shoe off his foot, and left him with numerous burns. He eventually started to believe some supernatural force was actively trying to destroy him, and who could blame him? For a while, he even carried a can of water with him everywhere just in case. They didn't call him the human lightning rod for nothing. 4. Fidel Castro. 600 assassination attempts and death by old age. Surviving over 55 assassination attempts is impressive, but Fidel Castro looked at that number and said, "Hold my rump." According to his head of security, the Cuban leader survived over 600 plots and conspiracies to kill him, mostly orchestrated by the CIA. And these weren't simple attacks. They were a cartoonish catalog of failure. They tried everything. An exploding cigar, a fountain pen with a hidden hypodermic needle, a wetsuit dusted with flesh-eating fungus, and even an exploding conch shell to plant at his favorite diving spot. They even sent a former lover to poison him, but she supposedly hid the poison pills in her cold cream jar where they dissolved. It seems Castro's greatest defense wasn't his bodyguards, but the sheer, almost comical incompetence of his enemies. He died of natural causes at 90. 5. Vesna Vulovic, falling 33,000 feet without a parachute, because why not? Imagine falling from a plane at 33,000 feet. Now, imagine doing it without a parachute. That was the reality for Vesna Vulovic, a 22-year-old Serbian flight attendant in 1972. A suspected briefcase bomb tore her plane apart mid-air, and she plummeted toward the earth, trapped in a section of the fuselage. Miraculously, this metal coffin landed at the perfect angle on a heavily snow-covered wooded mountainside in Czechoslovakia, cushioning the impact just enough. She was found by a villager who had been a medic in World War II and knew how to keep her alive until help arrived. She woke from a coma with no memory of the fall, and her first words were reportedly asking for a cigarette. She survived the highest fall without a parachute ever recorded, proving that sometimes the universe has a very strange and violent way of making you famous. 6. Violet Jessop, the unsinkable stewardess who should have switched careers. Violet Jessop might be the most unlucky or lucky woman to ever work at sea. She was an ocean liner stewardess who had a bizarre habit of being on board ships during their worst moments. First, she was working on the RMS Olympic when it collided with a British warship in 1911. The ship was heavily damaged but limped back to port. A year later, she took a job on its brand new sister ship, the supposedly unsinkable RMS Titanic. We all know how that voyage ended. Violet was loaded into a lifeboat and survived the historic disaster. You'd think she'd find a new career, but no. During World War I, she served as a nurse on the third sister ship, the HMHS Britannic. In 1916, it struck a German mine and sank in under an hour. And yes, Violet survived that too. If you ever invent a time machine and see her booking a cruise, take the train. 7. Harrison O'Keene. 72 hours in an underwater tomb, with just a Coke. For 3 days, Harrison O'Keene was trapped in a nightmare. He was the cook on a Nigerian tugboat when it capsized and sank 100 feet to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. While his 11 crewmates drowned, O'Keene was washed into an office bathroom that had miraculously formed a 4-foot air pocket. In total darkness, freezing cold, and with only a can of Coke, he sat on an overturned box and listened to the sounds of unknown sea creatures eating the bodies of his friends. When a rescue diver team arrived, they were on a grim body recovery mission. Imagine their absolute shock when they were inspecting the wreck and a hand suddenly reached out from the darkness and grabbed them. O'Keene had survived for nearly 72 hours in an underwater tomb. His rescue was a 1-in-a-million miracle. 8. Martin de Jong, the Dutch cyclist who dodged death by being cheap. Some people collect stamps. Dutch professional cyclist Martin de Jong seems to collect near-death experiences with Malaysia Airlines. In March 2014, he was scheduled to fly on flight MH370, the one that famously vanished without a trace. At the last minute, he found a cheaper flight that didn't have a long layover and switched. A few months later in July, he was booked to fly on flight MH17. Just before leaving for the airport, he decided to save a few €100 and swapped his ticket for a different flight that left a few days later. MH17 was shot down over Ukraine, killing everyone on board. Twice in 5 months, this man's thriftiness saved his life. He literally dodged 2 of the most infamous air disasters of the 21st century because he was a savvy shopper. 9. Ludger Silberus, the drunk who survived doomsday in a cell. In May 1902, being arrested was the best thing that could have happened to Ludger Silberus. He was thrown into a solitary confinement cell in the town of Saint-Pierre on the island of Martinique for getting into a drunken brawl. A few days later, the nearby volcano Mount Pelée erupted in one of the most violent explosions of the 20th century. A superheated pyroclastic flow, moving at hundreds of miles per hour, instantly incinerated the city, killing all 30,000 inhabitants, all except one. Ludger's cell was a poorly ventilated bomb-proof stone box partially underground, which shielded him from the deadly heat and gas. He was discovered 4 days later, horribly burned but alive. He was pardoned for his crimes and later toured with Barnum and Bailey Circus as the man who lived through doomsday. 10. Anatoly Bugorsky, the physicist who put his head in a particle beam and lived. In 1978, Soviet physicist Anatoly Bugorsky was working at the largest particle accelerator in the Soviet Union when the unthinkable happened. While checking faulty equipment, he accidentally stuck his head directly in the path of the operating proton beam. The beam shot through his skull at near light speed, drilling through his brain with massive radiation equivalent to 300,000 rads, a dose that would normally be instantly fatal. Bugorsky described seeing a flash brighter than 1,000 suns, but felt no pain. The left half of his face swelled beyond recognition, and the skin peeled off, revealing bone underneath. Doctors expected him to die within days. However, he not only survived but completed his doctorate and continued working as a scientist for decades. He lost hearing in one ear, was partially paralyzed on the left side of his face, and suffered occasional seizures, but his intellectual capacity remained completely intact. He's the only confirmed human to be struck by a high-energy particle beam and live to tell about it. 11. King Zog I of Albania. 55. Assassination attempts and still chain smoking. If survival were a competitive sport, King Zog I of Albania would be the undisputed world champion. This man wasn't just lucky. He made a career out of dodging death. During his reign, he reportedly survived over 55 assassination attempts. That's not a typo. 55. These weren't distant plots either. In 1931, while leaving the Vienna State Opera, assassins ambushed his car. Zog didn't just duck and cover, he pulled out his own pistol and returned fire, helping his bodyguards fight off the attackers. He was a notorious chain smoker, reportedly puffing through 200 cigarettes a day. Yet it was other people trying to kill him that was his biggest health risk. For King Zog, assassination attempts were less a threat and more a recurring annoyance on his daily schedule. 12. Betty Lou Oliver, the woman who fell 75 floors and bounced. In 1945, a B-25 bomber lost in thick fog crashed directly into the 78th and 79th floors of the Empire State Building. Elevator operator Betty Lou Oliver was on the 80th floor and was thrown from her car by the explosion, suffering severe burns. Rescue workers placed her in a nearby elevator to get her to safety. That's when her luck went from terrible to catastrophic, and then looped all the way back to miraculous. The elevator cables, damaged in the crash, snapped. Betty Lou Oliver plunged 75 stories straight down. But here's the kicker. The 1,000 feet of severed cable had fallen to the bottom of the shaft first, coiling into a dense, springy cushion. The falling car landed on this makeshift metal trampoline, and she survived. She holds the Guinness World Record for the longest survived elevator fall. 13. Wenceslaus I, saved by the snooze button. Wenceslaus I, the Duke of Bohemia in the 10th century, was known as a pious and good-natured ruler. So good, in fact, that his power-hungry younger brother, Boleslav the Cruel, decided to have him killed. A group of assassins lay in wait for Wenceslaus outside a church, ready to ambush him on his way to morning service. It was a perfect plan. But that particular morning, the Duke, a man of routine and prayer, did something completely out of character. He overslept. After waiting for a while and seeing no sign of their target, the assassins got bored, figured he wasn't coming, and simply went home. Wenceslaus's life was saved not by guards or a premonition, but by a simple lazy snooze. Sometimes the snooze button is the most powerful defense system in the world. Still not subscribed? Even these people had better survival instincts than your commitment issues. 14. Timothy Dexter, the idiot who failed upwards. So hard, he broke capitalism. Timothy Dexter was a fantastically unintelligent American businessman from the 18th century who by all accounts should have died penniless. His wealthy, educated rivals constantly gave him terrible investment advice, hoping to ruin him. They told him to sell warming pans used to heat beds in cold New England to the tropical West Indies. A dumb idea, right? He did it anyway. The locals found they were perfect for ladling molasses, and he made a massive profit. Then they sarcastically told him to ship coal to Newcastle, the English town that was the world's leading coal producer. It was the definition of a pointless venture. Dexter did it, and his ship arrived right in the middle of a massive miner strike, allowing him to sell his coal at an astronomical price. He failed upwards so hard he broke the system. 15. Peter Freuchen, the explorer who escaped death with a poop dagger. Peter Freuchen wasn't just a Danish explorer, he was a 6'7" giant of a man who treated the Arctic like his personal backyard. But one day, the backyard tried to bury him. Caught in a blizzard, he dug a hole for shelter only to be trapped under a sudden avalanche of snow and ice that froze as solid as concrete. With his tools out of reach, Peter was facing a frozen tomb. So he did what any resourceful, desperate man would do. He defecated, shaped it into a long, sharp chisel, and waited for it to freeze solid in the Arctic temperatures. Armed with his newly forged poop dagger, he chiseled his way out. As a bonus, he later had to amputate his own gangrenous toes with a pair of pliers and no anesthetic. Seriously, this guy's life was a survival movie on hard mode. 16. Mad Jack Churchill, the soldier who brought a sword to a gunfight and won. While soldiers in World War II were armed with machine guns, grenades, and tanks, British officer John Churchill, better known as Mad Jack, thought that was all a bit boring. His weapons of choice were a Scottish broadsword, a longbow, and bagpipes. This wasn't a joke. He's credited with the last recorded longbow kill in wartime, taking out a German NCO in 1940. He once captured 42 German soldiers and a mortar crew armed with only his sword. He would signal a charge by playing his bagpipes, a terrifying and confusing sound on a modern battlefield. His personal motto was, Any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed. How this man survived the entire war is a testament to the idea that sometimes being unpredictably and utterly insane is the best defense of all. 17. Aron Ralston, the climber who cut off his own arm with a dull knife. In April 2003, American climber Aron Ralston was exploring a remote canyon in Utah alone when an 800-pound boulder dislodged and crushed his right arm against the canyon wall. He was completely trapped in one of the most isolated places in America, having told no one where he was going. For 5 days and 7 hours, Ralston survived on rationed water and no food, recording goodbye messages on his video camera. When he ran out of water and began hallucinating from dehydration, he made an extreme decision: use his dull multi-tool to amputate his own trapped arm. First, he had to break his radius and ulna against the rock, then cut through muscle, tendons, and nerves for over an hour of indescribable agony. After freeing himself, he had to rappel down a 65-foot drop with one arm and walk 7 miles to find help, all while bleeding out. By pure chance, he encountered a family of hikers who alerted a rescue helicopter. His story inspired the film 127 Hours. 18. Ann Hodges, the only person ever hit by a meteorite while napping. Of all the billions of people who have ever lived, only one person is officially confirmed to have been directly struck by a meteorite. Her name was Ann Hodges. In November 1954, she was taking a nap on her couch in Sylacauga, Alabama, when an 8.5-pound chunk of rock from outer space crashed through her roof. It smashed into her large console radio, ricocheted off it, and slammed into her hip. The impact left her with a massive pineapple-shaped bruise, but she was otherwise unharmed. Think about the cosmic odds. A fragment of an asteroid traveling for millions of years through the void of space ended its journey by giving a woman a nasty bruise while she slept. It's arguably the most targeted yet ultimately harmless celestial event in human history. 19. Anders Hellstrup, the skydiver who dodged a cosmic bullet. When you jump out of a plane, you worry about your parachute not opening or a bad landing. You don't worry about being taken out by a cosmic sniper. But for Norwegian parachutist Anders Hellstrup, that almost became reality. During a jump, something dark and rocky zipped past his head at incredible speed. He felt nothing, but his helmet cameras caught everything. It was a meteorite, specifically in its dark flight phase after it had stopped burning. He had captured the first ever footage of a meteorite falling through the sky from a skydiver's perspective. The odds of this happening are so astronomically small, it's practically impossible to calculate. It's one thing to be lucky. It's another thing to narrowly dodge a bullet fired from the asteroid belt millions of years ago. 20. Andrew Jackson. The president too tough for gunpowder to work against, Andrew Jackson, the 7th U.S. president, was a man so famously tough, he was nicknamed Old Hickory. In 1835, that reputation was put to the ultimate test during the first ever presidential assassination attempt. A disgruntled house painter named Richard Lawrence approached Jackson and fired a pistol at him from point-blank range. Click. Misfire. As Lawrence pulled out a second pistol, Jackson, being the absolute madman he was at 67 years old, didn't run or hide. He charged, raising his cane to beat the assassin down. Lawrence fired the second pistol. Click. Another misfire. The odds of 2 separate properly loaded pistols misfiring in the humid weather of that day were later calculated to be 1 in 125,000. It seems even gunpowder was too intimidated to work properly in the presence of Andrew Jackson. 21. Roy Benavidez, the soldier who was too angry to die. Master Sergeant Roy Benavidez of the U.S. Army was the protagonist of one of the most heroic and miraculously lucky actions of the Vietnam War. In May 1968, when a 12-man reconnaissance team was trapped by over 1,000 North Vietnamese soldiers, Benavidez jumped from a helicopter into the combat zone, armed with only a combat knife. During 6 hours of fierce battle, he rescued wounded soldiers, distributed ammunition, called in airstrikes, and coordinated the evacuation, all while receiving multiple wounds. By the end of the battle, he had been shot 7 times, had shrapnel fragments throughout his body, a bayonet stab through both lungs, and had lost so much blood that doctors declared him dead and put him in a body bag. When he was about to be zipped up, he spit blood in the doctor's face to prove he was still alive. He survived against all odds, recovering after months of surgeries. 22. Julian Koepke, the teenager who fell 2 miles into the Amazon and walked out. On Christmas Day, 1971, Juliane Koepke, a 17-year-old German teenager, was flying with her mother over the Peruvian Amazon rainforest when lightning struck the plane, causing it to disintegrate mid-flight at 10,000 feet. Juliane, still strapped to her seat, fell through the jungle canopy. The dense foliage and updrafts apparently slowed her fall enough to survive. She woke the next day, alone, with a broken collarbone, one eye swollen shut, deep cuts, and no sign of the other 91 passengers or crew. Her mother had died on impact. For 11 days, Juliane walked barefoot through the impenetrable jungle, following a stream as her biologist father had taught her. She survived eating candy she found in the wreckage, suffered maggot infections in her wounds, and faced caimans and other dangers. Finally, she found a logger's cabin and was rescued. 23. Adolfo Suarez, saved by a kamikaze pigeon. Being a politician can be dangerous, but for Spanish Prime Minister Adolfo Suarez, the biggest threat came from a hunting trip with a friend. During the hunt, his companion swung his shotgun around to track a bird, accidentally pointing it directly at Suarez's head. The man fired. At that exact split second, a single unlucky pigeon flew directly between the two men. The bird took the full force of the shotgun blast, instantly exploding in a puff of feathers and saving the Prime Minister's life. It was the ultimate case of being in the wrong place at the wrong time for the pigeon, and the absolute luckiest moment for Suarez. He was saved by a feathered bodyguard he never knew he had. 24. Half-hanged Maggie, the woman who survived her own execution. Maggie Dixon's story is proof that sometimes a job poorly done can save a life. In 1724, in Edinburgh, Maggie was convicted of a crime and sentenced to be hanged. The execution went ahead as planned. She was strung up, dangled for the required time, and was declared dead. Her body was placed in a wooden coffin and loaded onto a cart for burial. On the way to the graveyard, however, the people transporting her heard a terrifying banging sound coming from inside the coffin. They opened it to find Maggie very much alive and probably very confused. Under Scottish law at the time, her sentence was to be hanged until dead. Since the sentence had technically been carried out, she couldn't be executed a second time for the same crime. She was legally free to go and live for another 40 years, forever known as Half-Hanged Maggie. 25. Wenceslao Moguel, shot 9 times by a firing squad and survived. Getting shot once and surviving is lucky, but Wenceslao Moguel's story is in a league of its own. During the Mexican Revolution in 1915, he was captured and sentenced to death by firing squad without a trial. He was lined up against a wall, and a squad of riflemen fired at him 9 times, riddling his body with bullets. To ensure the job was done, an officer then walked up and delivered the coup de grace, a final shot to the head at close range. Miraculously, none of the bullets destroyed his vital organs, and the headshot passed through his cheek and out the other side without hitting his brain. He pretended to be dead until his executioners left, then crawled away to safety. He lived a long life, even appearing on Ripley's Believe It or Not, forever known as El Fusilado, the executed one. 26. King Hassan II, the king who tricked his assassins into being his escort. In 1972, King Hassan II of Morocco was flying home on his personal Boeing 727 when his own air force tried to shoot him out of the sky in a military coup. Rebel fighter jets riddled the plane with bullets, disabling one engine and threatening to tear the aircraft apart. As the royal plane began to fall, the king realized that brute force wouldn't save him, but a massive bluff might. He grabbed the radio and with astonishing coolness shouted in the voice of a crew member, "The tyrant is dead, the tyrant is dead, long live the homeland." Believing their mission was a success, the rebel pilots stopped firing. They even saluted the dead king's plane by dipping their wings and escorted the crippled aircraft to a safe landing. 27. Jean Bedel Bokassa, saved by a waiter's serving tray. Jean Bedel Bokassa was the self-proclaimed emperor of the Central African Republic, a notoriously brutal and eccentric dictator. But even tyrants need a bit of luck. During a public appearance, an assassin managed to get close enough to throw a grenade directly at him. The deadly projectile was sailing through the air, about to turn the emperor into a red mist, when fate intervened in the most mundane way imaginable. A waiter who was walking nearby instinctively raised the metal serving tray he was carrying to shield himself. The grenade bounced off the tray, flew in a completely different direction, and detonated away from its intended target, saving Bokassa's life. His continued rule was secured not by an elite bodyguard, but by a piece of dinnerware. 28. Walter Summerford, the man lightning refused to let go. Walter Summerford's story is so bizarre it sounds like a tall tale, but it's a chilling reminder that lightning apparently can hold a grudge. In 1918, while serving as a British officer in World War I, Major Summerford was struck by lightning while on horseback, paralyzing him from the waist down. He recovered, only to be struck again in 1924 while fishing under a tree in Canada, which paralyzed the right side of his body. He recovered again. In 1930, he was hit a third time while walking through a park, which left him permanently paralyzed. He died 2 years later, but the lightning wasn't finished. 4 years after his death, in 1936, a lightning bolt struck the cemetery and destroyed his tombstone. The universe didn't just want him gone, it wanted to erase the very memory of him. 29. John Starks, saved by a handshake that wouldn't end. Imagine standing before a firing squad. Your sentence has been read. Your fate is sealed. This was the reality for British soldier John Starks, condemned to death for desertion during the Napoleonic Wars. As the soldiers of the firing squad raised their rifles and took aim, a friend who had come to witness the execution stepped forward for a final handshake. Starks, with moments to live, clasped his friend's hand. It was a prolonged, somber farewell. As they held their handshake, a rider was spotted galloping toward them in the distance, waving a piece of paper. It was a last-minute pardon from the Duke of York. Had the handshake been even a few seconds shorter, the order to fire would have been given. 30. Claudius, the Roman who fooled everyone into making him emperor. In the deadly backstabbing world of Roman imperial politics, where family dinners often ended with someone being poisoned and political disagreements were settled with assassination rather than debate, being perceived as a fool was usually a death sentence, unless you were Claudius. Plagued by a limp that made him walk awkwardly, a stammer that made public speaking nearly impossible, and various nervous tics that caused him to drool and twitch at inopportune moments, he was seen by his aristocratic family, including the psychopathic Emperor Caligula, who once tried to make his horse a consul, as a harmless, embarrassing idiot who brought shame to the imperial bloodline. While other members of the imperial family, those who were handsome, eloquent, and politically ambitious, were being systematically poisoned with exotic toxins, exiled to remote islands in the Mediterranean, or executed in elaborate public spectacles during the endless power struggles that defined Roman succession, Claudius was completely ignored. He was the family joke, not a threat, the uncle you felt sorry for at family gatherings. He spent his time writing histories that nobody read and studying subjects nobody cared about, effectively invisible to the power players circling each other like sharks. Then, in 41 AD, Caligula was assassinated by his own Praetorian Guard, stabbed 30 times in a coordinated attack that ended one of Rome's most unstable reigns. The Praetorian Guard, suddenly finding themselves without an emperor and in a panic to find a new one before the Senate could seize control and potentially eliminate the Guard entirely, stormed the palace looking for any surviving member of the imperial family. They found Claudius hiding behind a curtain in a small room, trembling with fear, probably convinced they were there to kill him too and complete the family purge. But they didn't kill him. In a decision that shocked everyone, including Claudius himself, they proclaimed him emperor on the spot, figuring that any imperial was better than no imperial, and that Claudius, being seen as weak and pliable, would be easy to control. His entire life of being underestimated, mocked, and dismissed became his greatest asset, allowing him to fail upwards into the most powerful position in the known world. 31. J.P. Morgan, the boss who wisely skipped the Titanic. J.P. Morgan was not just a titan of industry or a wealthy businessman. He was the man who owned the White Star Line, the company that built the Titanic, the ship that was supposed to be the ultimate symbol of human engineering triumph and unsinkable maritime technology. As its owner and the puppet master behind the entire operation, he was naturally scheduled to be on the ship's glittering maiden voyage from Southampton to New York, occupying one of the most lavish suites on board, probably with gold-plated fixtures and imported champagne chilling on ice. He had his bags packed, his tickets purchased, and was ready to go, probably looking forward to the publicity and prestige of being on the inaugural voyage of the world's most famous ship. However, just before the ship was set to sail from Southampton on that fateful April day in 1912, he abruptly canceled his trip at the last minute, pulling out of what should have been the social event of the decade. The official reason given was a sudden illness, something vague and convenient that rich people always claim when they don't want to attend something. However, some rumors suggest he was simply preoccupied with business dealings that required his immediate attention in New York, or perhaps more scandalously, that he was preoccupied with a mistress and decided a romantic getaway was more appealing than a transatlantic voyage. Whatever the real reason, whether it was genuine sickness, business acumen, or romantic distraction, his last-minute decision saved him from going down with his own unsinkable masterpiece when it struck an iceberg and sank, killing over 1,500 people. It's the ultimate example of a boss wisely choosing to skip the first day at a new and very flawed workplace, leaving his employees to deal with the disaster while he remained safe on dry land. 32. Hugh Williams. The name the sea refuses to take. The strange case of Hugh Williams is less about one lucky person and more about a name that seems to be a cosmic life preserver, a supernatural get-out-of-death-free card that defies all logical explanation. In 1664, during the age of wooden sailing ships and treacherous maritime conditions, a ship sank in the Menai Strait off the coast of Wales, a body of water known for its dangerous currents and rocky shores that have claimed countless vessels over the centuries. The only survivor pulled from the freezing waters was a man named Hugh Williams. Tragic, but not unusual for the time. In 1785, over a century later, another ship sank in the exact same spot, as if the strait itself had a vendetta against maritime traffic. Again, there was only one survivor pulled from the wreckage, and his name was Hugh Williams. Now that's starting to get weird, but you could chalk it up to coincidence since Williams is a common Welsh surname. Then, in 1820, a third vessel capsized in the same treacherous waters, the same cursed stretch of the Menai Strait. Once again, everyone perished except for a single man named Hugh Williams, who somehow managed to survive when everyone else drowned. The odds of this triple coincidence, spanning over 150 years and 3 separate maritime disasters, are so mind-bogglingly small that it defies rational explanation and enters the realm of the supernatural or the statistically impossible. It's as if the sea gods of that particular strait had a strict policy carved in stone. We will take the ship, we will take the crew, but we're leaving Hugh Williams behind because apparently that name has some kind of maritime immunity we don't understand. 33. Elmer of Malmesbury. The flying monk who invented aviation 600 years early. In the 11th century, long before the Wright brothers figured out powered flight at Kitty Hawk, and long before anyone understood concepts like aerodynamics, lift or drag coefficients, an English monk named Elmer of Malmesbury decided he had figured out the secret to human flight through pure faith and medieval engineering. He constructed a set of crude wings, probably made from wood, cloth, and whatever materials he could scavenge from around the monastery, climbed to the top of Malmesbury Abbey, a tower that rose high above the surrounding countryside, and with more faith than aerodynamic knowledge or any understanding of gravity, leaped into the air like some kind of medieval superhero. Shockingly, against all odds and everything we know about physics, it kind of worked. He didn't just fall straight down like a stone, he actually glided for over 600 feet, a distance longer than 2 football fields, soaring above the heads of shocked onlookers who probably thought they were witnessing either a miracle or demonic possession. For a brief, glorious moment, a monk was flying. Then, as gravity and physics inevitably reasserted themselves, a gust of wind caused him to lose control and crash back to Earth in what was probably a very ungraceful landing. He survived the impact, though he broke both of his legs in multiple places and was left with a permanent limp that reminded him daily of his brief moment of aviation glory. He later lamented, with the benefit of hindsight and 2 shattered legs, that his only mistake was forgetting to add a tail for stability and control, showing that he actually understood more about flight mechanics than most people of his era. This man didn't just survive a reckless experiment that should have killed him instantly. He became one of history's earliest and most successful pioneers of aviation, achieving human flight centuries before it was supposed to be possible, all while wearing monk's robes. So there you have it. 33 people who made the universe look like it was running on a faulty operating system, like reality itself hit a bug and forgot to execute the death protocols. These aren't just lucky people who found $20 on the street or won a small lottery prize. They're proof that sometimes reality takes a coffee break, gets distracted, and forgets to kill someone who absolutely, definitively should be dead based on every known law of probability in physics. They're statistical anomalies, impossible survivors, people who walked away from situations that should have been game over. If you've got a story of impossible luck that makes this list look tame, a tale of survival that defies explanation, drop it in the comments below, because I guarantee there are more stories out there that we haven't covered. And hey, if you want to see which of your suggestions make it into a future video, If you want to be part of curating the next collection of impossibly lucky people, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Because let's be honest, after hearing these stories of people who survived atomic bombs, firing squads, 75-story elevator falls, and angry lightning bolts, you need all the luck you can get just to make it through an average Tuesday.